A rainy day in the forest, a survival story. 1. The sky breaks open. The forest had been quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that presses gently against the ears and makes a traveler aware of every breath. Tall sal trees stood like patient guardians, their leaves barely moving in the warm air. Birds hopped along branches, calling softly, while somewhere far away a stream murmured over stones. Arman walked alone along a narrow trail, his boots pressing into the soft earth, his mind calm and unburdened. He had planned only a short hike, enough to feel the wild air and return before sunset. Then the sky changed. A low rumble rolled across the canopy like distant drums. Arman paused and looked up. The blue sky had begun to dim, cloud shadows sliding over the treetops. Within minutes, the clouds thickened, swelling and darkening, as if the heavens themselves were gathering strength. A cool wind swept through the forest, shaking leaves loose. The birds fell silent. The first drop of rain landed on Arman's cheek like a warning. Then another. And another. Soon, the forest erupted in sound as rain poured down in heavy sheets. Leaves clapped under the sudden weight, branches bent, and the earth released a deep, rich scent of wet soil and crushed greenery. Arman pulled his jacket tighter, but it was no use. The rain soaked through him almost instantly. The narrow trail vanished beneath flowing water, and the familiar landmarks blurred into a maze of trunks and vines. He tried to turn back, but the forest looked different now, shadows deeper, paths hidden, distances deceptive. Within moments, Arman realized a frightening truth: he was lost. 2. Panic and patience. Fear arrived quietly at first, a tightening in the chest, a slight tremble in the hands. Arman stood beneath a large tree, rain streaming down his face, and forced himself to breathe. Panic, he knew, could be deadlier than the storm itself. He remembered advice he had once read: stop, think, observe, plan. He stopped moving. The rain continued its relentless fall, drumming on leaves like thousands of fingers tapping at once. Water ran along the ground in small rivers, carrying twigs and fallen leaves. The forest smelled alive and wild, but also unforgiving. Arman observed his surroundings carefully. The tree he stood under had a thick trunk and broad leaves that offered slight shelter. Nearby, he could see a cluster of rocks rising from the ground, and beyond them, darker foliage that might indicate a dip or ravine. He checked his pockets: a small knife, a half-empty water bottle, a lighter sealed in plastic, and his phone, useless now with no signal and a dying battery. He planned. Night would come soon, and the rain showed no sign of stopping. He needed shelter, warmth, and a way to survive until morning or until he could find his way back. 3. Finding shelter. Arman knew that staying dry was impossible, but staying less wet could mean survival. He scanned the area for natural shelter. The rocks caught his attention again. Carefully, he walked toward them, testing the ground with each step to avoid slipping. Behind the rocks, he discovered a shallow hollow formed by years of erosion. It wasn't a cave, but the overhang might block some of the rain. Using his knife, Arman cut large leaves and branches, layering them against the rock face to create a crude barrier. He worked methodically, ignoring the cold creeping into his fingers. As he worked, the forest seemed to watch him. Insects crawled from flooded burrows, frogs croaked in sudden excitement, and the rain hissed against stone. When he finally stepped back, His shelter looked fragile, but it was something. He crawled inside and sat with his knees pulled close, listening to the storm rage outside. Water still dripped through gaps, but the overhang spared him the worst of the downpour. 4. Fire against the rain. Warmth was his next concern. Hypothermia could set in even in warm forests when rain and wind worked together. Arman checked his lighter dry, thankfully. Starting a fire in the rain would be difficult, but not impossible. He ventured out briefly to collect dry material from under thick bushes and fallen logs. Even in the rain, some would stay dry inside. He gathered bark, twigs, and fibrous plant matter, then returned to the shelter. Using the rock face as a windbreak, Arman built a small fire base. He struck the lighter on seeing nothing. Twice. On the third attempt, a flame appeared. He fed it carefully, shielding it with his hands, whispering encouragement as if it were alive. When the fire finally caught, it was small and weak, but it burned. He touched Arman's numb fingers, and relief washed through him. The flickering light danced across the rock wall, turning shadows into moving shapes. Outside, the rain continued its assault, but inside the shelter, Arman had created a tiny island of warmth. 5. Hunger and water. Hours passed. The rain softened but did not stop. Arman's stomach growled, reminding him that survival was not just about shelter and fire. He had little food, only a crushed energy bar in his pocket. He ate it slowly, savoring each bite. He knew the forest held food, but searching in the rain and darkness would be risky. Instead, he focused on water. Ironically, water was everywhere, but drinking directly from streams could be dangerous. He placed a large leaf near the edge of the shelter, allowing rainwater to collect and drip into his bottle. Clean rainwater was safer, and over time he managed to refill the bottle halfway. The simple success lifted his spirits. Survival was a series of small victories, he realized. 6. Sounds in the darkness. As night fully claimed the forest, the sounds changed. The rain softened into a steady whisper, but new noises emerged: a rustling, distant calls, and the occasional snap of a branch. Arman stiffened. He knew predators lived here, though most avoided humans. Still, fear crept in. He fed the fire to keep it alive, knowing light and flame could discourage curious animals. At one point, he heard heavy footsteps nearby. His heart hammered. He grabbed his knife, holding his breath. The footsteps paused, then moved away, swallowed by the forest. Only then did Arman realize how tense his body had become. He exhaled slowly, letting the fear drain away. 7. Memories and resolve. Alone in the shelter, Arman's thoughts drifted. He remembered his family, the comfort of home, the ordinary days he had taken for granted. The forest, in its raw power, stripped life down to its essentials. He promised himself that if he survived this night, he would respect nature more deeply, and not as a place to conquer, but as a force to understand. The rain lulled him into a light sleep, broken and restless, but sleep nonetheless. 8. Dawn's pale light. When Arman woke, the forest looked transformed. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, and pale light filtered through the trees. Mist curled around trunks and hovered above the ground like ghosts. His fire had died down to embers, but the air felt warmer. Birds began to sing again, tentative at first, then bolder. Arman stretched his stiff limbs and stepped out of the shelter. The forest floor glistened, every leaf jeweled with water. Though still lost, he felt renewed hope. 9. Reading the forest. With daylight, Arman could think more clearly. He looked for signs of broken branches, footprints, the slope of the land. He remembered that streams often led to larger rivers, which could lead to human settlements. He packed what little he had and followed the faint sound of running water he had noticed earlier. The ground was slippery, but he moved carefully, using a stick for balance. The stream appeared after half an hour, swollen by rain but clear. Arman followed it downstream, trusting the logic of nature. 10. Challenges along the way. The journey was not easy. He crossed fallen trees, pushed through thick undergrowth, and slipped more than once into mud. His clothes remained damp, and fatigue crept in. Yet each step felt purposeful. The forest, though dangerous, also guided him. Sunlight broke through clouds in scattered beams, lighting the path like signals. He paused often to rest, drink rainwater, and listen. 11. Signs of life. After hours of walking, Arman noticed something unusual: a cut tree stump, old but unmistakably shaped by human hands. Hope surged. Soon after, he found a faint track, barely visible but real. He followed it eagerly, his pace quickening despite exhaustion. The forest began to thin. The trees spaced farther apart, and the undergrowth lightened. 12. The edge of the wild. By afternoon, Arman heard a sound that made his eyes sting with relief: distant voices. He pushed through the last line of trees and emerged onto a muddy clearing near a small village. People stared in surprise as he stumbled forward, soaked, dirty, but smiling. Someone ran to help him, offering water and a blanket. Arman sank to the ground, overwhelmed. 13. After the storm. Later, sitting under a tin roof while rain tapped gently above, Arman replayed the night in his mind. The fear, the struggle, the quiet triumphs. The forest had tested him, but it had also taught him. Survival was not about strength alone, but about calm thinking, respect, and resilience. 14. A changed man. When Arman finally returned home, the world felt different. He noticed small things: the comfort of dry clothes, the warmth of a meal, the safety of walls. The memory of the rainy forest stayed with him, not as a nightmare, but as a powerful reminder of human vulnerability and courage. 15. Moral of the story. A rainy day in the forest can become a fight for survival, but it can also become a lesson in patience, intelligence, and harmony with nature. When humans listen to the wild instead of fighting it blindly, survival becomes possible even in the fiercest storm.